Santiago. Thanks all of you for coming. I'm not used to talk to a research community. I'm used to talk to firefighters. So when we talk to firefighters, this is more a kind of conversation. So please, if you want to ask or interrupt, or you don't believe what I'm telling, just let me know. I will feel more comfortable. Yeah, I'm just alone speaking to you. That will not be good for me. So, I also thank Iago, because I never thought that Wildfire will take me to see all these parts of the world. Berlin is up far north, where I'm normally used to fight fires. So that's not normal for me to be here. But what I will be explaining to you today, I started to be part of this global community back in 2009. There, it was at the highest peak of the economic turmoil. The crisis had been just affecting the world, and I was called to Wall Street to apply the Wildfire lessons learned to try to readapt the economy to be able to just build the knowledge we have about disturbance, about dealing with uncertainty into the economic world. So that was the first time I realized that what we know, because we are so often exposed to the uncertainty, is some way lesson that can be used in other specialties or other knowledge areas of expertise. So I will try to explain today what it's all about Wildfire, but it's just don't think about Wildfire. I will explain what I know about Wildfire because I'm a firefighter. But what I will be explaining to you is also good for any kind of disturbance in any kind of ecosystem. So we in Wildfire, we are a lot more often exposed to uncertainty. And that's why we are evolving a little bit faster than other specialties. But all that I will be talking about is how to look at a problem, how to understand, how not to be stressed, how to realize that you need to change your strategy, and how to think not in terms of winning, but in terms of surviving. And that's the most important thing we'll be talking about. So that's a picture. Sorry, can you go to the first one? Back. That picture, it's from last 22nd of July. This is Barcelona city. 4 million people living there, watching at that wildfire. That's the wildfire. And then suddenly we've got a newer storm coming, dry storms. We are not used to those dry storms, but they start to happen in the last 10 years. Then wildfire there, another wildfire started there naturally. So that's a kind of, wow, it looks like the end of the world. But no, it was not the end of the world, because this storm was bringing water behind. So the storm started the fire, the storm put the fire out, and we spent a lot of money there just to make nice pictures. So a lot to think. What are we doing there? So I don't know, just making people feel comfortable, because we firefighters were there. That's what we were doing, reducing people uncertainty. And people uncertainty is not something that it's easy to understand. It depends on everybody's knowledge. And that's why it's so tricky to deal with those things, because uncertainty is not something that you can know really with numbers. It depends a lot on people's mind. So can we go ahead? So fire, we need to understand that fire is all over the world. But just think a little bit. Which fires do you know? Where do you think fires is just burning everything? You have seen fires on the news. Have any idea which is the world's place in the world for firefighting? Australia is one area. Mediterranean is another area. California is another area. You need to realize that all the places you see in the news mainly are first world places, means rich people living in it. And that's why they are in the news, because property of rich people is being burned. But you never see those fires, or those fires, or all those fires, or those fires over there, or those over there. Fire is all over the world. The world is a world of fire. But we only worry about the fire that is affecting our society needs. And that's something you need to keep in mind. Wildfire, risk is not responding a risk of something that is affecting our forest. It's responding a risk that is affecting our society. That's why we know about the American wildfires, Australian wildfires, Mediterranean wildfires. We don't know about Congo wildfires or about Bangladesh wildfires or those fires. So that's something we need to understand. Please. So that's the feeling that we have about climate change and fire. And that's what's driving European policy about wildfire. And that's why my bosses are paying me, because they want to make sure our forests don't die and our forests are there for the next generation, because they think that they will all then burn because climate change. So the first step for us is explain what that really means. We are not experts in climate change. We are just only experts on fire, but there are a lot of information we can explain. And right now I am working in Germany in the EFI, which is the European Forest Institute, to draft the strategy for Europe fighting fire. And so that's part of the knowledge we have. Go ahead. So that's what you think when the wildfire is, which is a front of flames moving over the landscape, which is a wall of flames just moving over the terrain and burning everything that is in front of them, so we can fight them, sending airplanes or all different kind of tools. But we need to know a lot more about wildfire. So can we look at the videos that are there? One is the low intensity. Okay. This is low intensity. You cannot start them. If you go to the file, I can let you know which one it is.
Which one?
If you go to the file, so I can see my file. Sorry about that. Problems between Macintosh and Windows thing. Okay.
So it's this one?
No, inside my pen there was the videos in a file. Okay, inside the Humboldt, this one. Okay. Then you go to this one, the second. Yep. That's what we call a low intensity wildfire. So there are a lot of fires that they don't kill forest. So because the conditions of fuel are not dry enough, so as you can see, you can just let it go again. It's a fire that is burning without killing the trees, only burning the under trees vegetation. That's what we call low intensity fire. So if we go to the other video, which is high intensity, the first one, this one, yeah. That's another thing. That's the same type of forest, but at different conditions, and that's at noon. It's not midnight. It's black because of all the smoke that is there. And that's the same type of forest, exactly the same forest that burning in high intensity. So between those two different fires, there is a whole world of diversity. And a diversity of fire means a diversity of effects. So not all fire is bad, and not all fire is just destroying everything. A lot of low intensity fire, it's just creating dynamics in the ecosystem. And a lot of the high-intensity fires also opening gaps in our ecosystem and creating new spaces for species to migrate into it, so be able to adapt to climate change. So there is a lot of ecology effects of fire. So there is one other tricky thing. What's the impact of wildfire? The impact of wildfire, it depends again in the human understanding. So if we think fire is bad, the impact is really high. But probably a shepherd can think that this low-intensity fire is good because it's regenerating the grassland, so the impact is zero. It's a positive impact. So the effect and the impact is different, and that's something we need to understand. So wildfires itself, they have a lot of different effects. So if we can see this one, this video. That one, yep. That's a longer video. That's a fire that is a helicopter is one of our LTAC crews going to a wildfire. That wildfire was 2005, 16th of July, and you see that wildfire there. See the plume of smoke. It's 45-minute wildfire already. It's only 45 minutes. It burns around 1,600 hectares in 2 hours. So that's the backing of the fire. It's low intensity. You have some high intensity here, and as you see here, you have again low intensity fire under burning the trees, like this one is under burning, so the crowns are surviving. You have part of the head of the fire there. You have another spot fire, so the fire just send spots over there and light a new fire that is already running.
Why is the smoke different?
Can you stop the video? The smoke is different because the intensity the fire is burning vegetation is different. So depending on the amount of water or other chemical components that the fire is burning, so that's the color. If the smoke is starting to be black, it means that combustion is not complete. So it has a lot of chemical components in it, because there is a lot of vegetation burning at the same time. So it's still not complete. And when it's black, it means that it burns very well. It means that the time of the fire staying in the same place, it's longer. So it consumes everything very well. But when it's black, it means it goes fast, because it is a lot of chemicals in the air, so it can just spread through and doesn't stay there. So normally, speeds of 200-300 meters an hour are more or less white smoke, but when you get a speed of 5 kilometers an hour, then it's really black smoke. So that's the difference. And that creates different effects and different impacts over the landscape. And of course, but we as a society, we tend to say, fires, bad, always kill everything. And that's not true. There is a lot of effects in there. And in our history, when you go to the societies, I realized that my first time I went to Alaska, the indigenous people there, they had a lot of names for snow and for ice, because that's part of their ecosystem. In my hometown, I have 11 names for fire, and every name related to a different effect of the fire over my vegetation. So that was part of our cultural heritage. And now it's gone. It's only one, wildfire. It's not related to the effects. We've lost all that knowledge. We've lost all that cultural effect. And that is having dramatical effects in the way we manage landscape, the way we change the landscape, and the way we ruin our landscape, and we are avoiding our landscape to be adapted to climate change. That's a nice question. Go. So you will see the dramatic change between this side of the fire, the same fire, and the other side of the fire. This side is what we say is the sleeping side of the fire. The other side is the running side. You will see that. You see that's the spotting distance, more than 400 meters. Uh-oh. That's the head of the fire. Everything that is under the shadow of the smoke, it's already been preheated by the smoke, that it's high temperature smoke. Now we will go through and you will see the other side. When it's in the other side, it's one of the first movies that exist in Europe about what we call convective wildfires. So fires that don't move pushed by the wind are fires that move creating its own wind. You will see, you can see how small it looks, all this compared to the monster there. And it's not a big monster, it's just one normal day monster. Can you stop here a little bit? You see that smoke going into there, and this plume is shifting. That's the same that high pressure system over the continent, or a low pressure system. This thing is generating an amount of energy so big that he is creating a low pressure system already affecting the atmosphere. So it's creating a big bubble where he is having the power to change wind, humidity, and temperature inside that bubble. He is affecting the whole atmosphere surrounding, and that's why he's creating a tornado already. It's creating what we call firestorm. And that firestorm happens because there is a lot of fuel available, and those are the new types of wildfires we are facing, and that's an important achievement we've got in Europe. We thought that those things can only happen inside big continental surfaces where are really hot, and they create those low pressure systems. But in the last 20 years, we've seen that doesn't depend to be inside a big continental area. You can create that really close to the sea if you have enough wells. So you can start again. So as you see, the smoke column is shifting inside a little bit, and this being pulled there. So that's what we call it's the brain of the fire, and he's dominating everything around there. That's one cell, and you see another cell starting to be formed there. So they are the convective cells of the wildfire. You see that one over there? You see how it's starting to shift? That's another one. So I can skip the video. So I want to make sure that you understand that between low intensity and high intensity, there is a lot of difference. But between normal fires, it allows to a lot of different approaches to fight wildfires. But the most important thing we need to have in mind when we fight a fire is the rate of spread. The rate of spread of fire is critical. At which speed do you think the best firefighters in the world fight fire in terms of kilometers an hour? Which speed do you think it's affordable for the heroes of the 21st century? With all the technology and gadgets around there, and the airplanes and satellites looking at what they're doing and everything. What do you think? It's affordable.
In terms of
how many meters per hour or kilometers per hour a fire service is fighting fire?
Is fighting or extinguishing the fire?
Well, it means it's.
fighting, but you can lose.
Oh well, we understand that fighting means winning, because if you don't win, you are not there. You run away. If you are still on business, it means you are fighting. Is that you are winning? So I can change that. At what speed do you think we extinguish fire?
Half a meter?
Wow, not half a meter. We are a little bit better.
500 meters?
Yeah, 500 meters is an average. 500 meters is an average. Normally, in the worst day of a summer, we are around 300 meters. And in the best conditions we can find, we are approaching 1 kilometer with the support of all the technology. So look at those pictures. Look at 4 minutes after the starting of the fire. That's a fire of the day before. Then there is a spot fire on the other side there. And it was sleeping during the night. He was hot on the ground in the duff, but then he waits for the sun to hit it and the wind to push it. Then he starts then. 4 minutes later, then push. 7 minutes later, you see how it's jumping all over. There's a spot fire over there already. Just go. 9 minutes later, go. 11 minutes later. So there is no way we can fight those fire with all the technology that we have. They are always the best runners. And so 5 kilometers an hour, which looks a lot. But in 2012, we had in Europe wildfires that were at peaks of 21 kilometers an hour, which is a kind of record and something we cannot afford to fight. So we are deep into problem. Those fires are new. They are not the normal fires we used to have back in the 70s and the 80s. We started to see them in the year 94, and then in 2005. And now they happen more or less once every 2 years. They happen in really extreme conditions, and those are the fires that we have seen already in UK, in Ireland, in Norway, in Russia, in Poland, some of them in Czechoslovakia. So those things are starting to grow up. That's what we think it's part of the worst effect on climate change. So can go. So we are used to see Portugal, Spain, or Greece burning from the satellite. That's a normal thing. No? And that's mainly created by the Sahara Desert heat waves that goes through the Mediterranean and affect all the Mediterranean, creates the conditions for the fuel to dry up. So that's more or less the causing condition, and that's the risk. Normally where the risk seed zone in Europe and where you are in a safe area for fire. That used to be the normal thing. Go ahead. And now, so if we look, well, the surface we burn in a normal year, you can see that's GRC information. The Mediterranean is where more surface is, but we have fires all over Europe where we have data, but only burn really high levels of surface in the Mediterranean, normal situations. But, go ahead. The North Atlantic Oscillation, that's a normal Atlantic Oscillation, can change, and sometimes it goes positive and creates really dry conditions in Europe. Go ahead. And that's the condition we've had the last winter, for example. Go ahead. And then in those conditions, you can have a lot of fires burning. We don't see Ireland there, but Ireland has a lot of fires in 2011. And those conditions don't rely on the hot and dry air mass from the Sahara Desert. They rely on the dry air being pushed through or from Siberia, through Russia, through Europe, and affecting Central Europe and the Atlantic coast. So when the dry comes from the other side, the dry air, it's creating the conditions already for having really convective fire events in Europe. So go ahead. So that's like in 2003, we had a lot of fires up to the north. So Sweden was one of the worst burning surface countries, like Italy, that year, and less than Greece. So things are changing, and they're changing fast. And so that's the new risk. As you see, Mediterranean countries losing risk, and you are winning a lot of risk. So for us, that's good news, because that means a lot more business. There is a lot more surface there. So we'll come.
Does it mean that before in the past fires there didn't used to be so convective? You're saying so
No.
convection is coming
When I was
so aggressive?
in the 50s, 60s, we had 2-3 heat waves coming from Sahara in the whole 20 years. In the 90s, we used to have 1 every 2 years. Now we have 6-7 every year. So that's increasing the potential for atmosphere to create convection. But the worst, as you will see, is not the climate thing. It's that the landscape has changed. So Catalonia, back in the 1920s, used to be 10-15% forest land. Now it's 70% forest land. So there is a lot more surface of forest available. And back in the 20s, we all used to burn wood in the stoves to heat our houses. Now we all burn oil or gas. So there is a lot more fuel there. So there is a lot more energy available to burn. So if you have more atmosphere, it's more unstable, and the energy the fire is releasing is bigger, then the conditions are right to create such a big wildfire. So that's the changing landscape, the changing conditions. So it's a new phenomenon happening. We know that in historical times we had those wildfires, but not in the last 300 years. In the last 300 years, we have dominated the whole landscape, more or less. But now we are back to our cities. We are a lot more people, but we are not living in the landscape. So the continuous carpet of forest goes all over. That's new in the Mediterranean. It's not new in Central Europe. But so those things are changing.
Can I just, is this a the type of fire you get before this turns into one of these fire storms, is that a continuous development, do you think? Or do you think there are tipping points in terms of there's a critical thing and then it becomes a positive feedback?
A critical point. There are points of no return in our landscape. I will try to explain. That concept is what we call fire generations. So we know we've been through 5 different types of generations. That means fire problem, we try to solve the problem, and then solving the problem, we created a new problem. So we try to solve the new problem, evolve it to a new problem. So we have done 5 steps up the hill right now, not down the hill. So complicated. situation. Can go. So that's the forecast that we have. So the belt of Central Europe is one of the ones that will be more prone to increase their fire activity. So go ahead. But the most important thing that will happen in the next years, and it's already happening, is that it's not that our summers will be so dry that we have fires everywhere. It means that's the change that will happen. So normally we were used to have 30 days out of 90. It means 1 day every 3 days. That was really a fire risk day. That was the normal average in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Now things changed. In 94, which was the worst year in wildfire surface burn all around the northern hemisphere, we had a 32 days wildfire season. It means the whole summer, 32 days were really risk days. In 2012, we've had 78 out of 90. That's what climate change means. It's not that everything will go worse. It's that seasons will last longer for us in terms of fire season. So, as they say, we don't know about climate change, but we know that local things are becoming really hot. And that's reality for us. And that's evolving, and it's going farther north. So the most important thing is that fires are already all year round. 2013 has been one of the worst wildfire years in Spain, but none of the big wildfires has burned in summertime. So we spent 1 billion euros, 1 billion euros to pay all the resources to fight fires from May to October. And we have had the biggest wildfires from November to April. So a lot of things are changing, and we are wasting a lot of money, and we are not understanding anything of what's going on. That's what is happening. And also, we've been last January in Norway fighting fires, and we've been in Ireland, and we've been in Denmark. And of course, we never expect to be invited to those countries to do wildfire tourism. That's what we are doing right now. So things are changing. Can we go? So just a picture. That's my hometown area. Iago was growing up here. I discovered that today. So we went probably the same to schools, but we didn't meet one to each other. So look at this picture. That's last year picture. A lot of brush and forest and a lot of houses around. So can you pass the slide? That's in the 60s. Olive trees all over, brush. Where are the houses? So the problem, if you go back, well, it's that we are creating. We come from a landscape that had fires, and created a new landscape that have fires, have a lot more forests, and have a lot more things to protect from the fire. And that's because fire is a problem, and was not before. So go ahead. So that's one of the pictures in Catalonia. It's easy to understand why fire is a problem, because all these thousands of people are afraid of the fire. So that's a problem. We've had, the day we have this fire, that's 2nd of July 2003, that day you see the size of this fire, and you see how many people is just aware of the smoke. The same day we had another fire. It was 1,400 hectares fire, and 3 towns were totally blocked for the flames, so people cannot get out of there because of the flames. But those 3 towns were farm people towns. A total of 38 people were trapped there. 38 against all this. So the next day in the newspaper, the headings were terrible wildfire burning near Barcelona. And then at the end of the article was another fire already controlled, also burned in the border interior Aragon. So that's what is driving our risk in fire. New landscape and new impacts. It's not about the ecology effects of that fire, it's about the social effects of that fire. So the policy of fighting fire is not because the ecology impact, it's because the social impact. That's what we are, that's what is driving our motivation. That's what we are being paid for. Go ahead. So, just to show you what you said about the fuel built up, and that's a normal that plot of forest, and that's the same area after some management. So since we don't live anymore out of our forests are not managed like used to be. So they used to be like this, now they are like this. So that's a lot more fuel that's available to create convective fire. So the new landscape with a lot more surface, it's not that there is more surface of forest to burn, it's that there is a lot more surface to burn with a lot more fuel to burn. And that's creating a lot more problems for us, because it's a lot more difficult to fight fires here than here. So, but there is no money to do that management. There is no money available because the cost of doing that, it's so big that we cannot afford to pay for that. So we are in an increasing problem without options for management. We know what to do, but we cannot do it. So at the end of the year, I have 1,000 million euros to fight fires in Spain. But I have 100 million euros to manage forest. Why that happens? If we can go back. Because, in that one, because people around there, they are more, or they advise, please use our tax to protect us instead of manage forests. We want to be protected. That's the issue. We want to be protected now. And we want to see people fighting fire, which is what is worrying me. We don't want you to manage forests. So, and just, you will tell me that if you manage forests, fires will not burn my house, but still I will have fires. The society is telling, I don't want to see smoke from the fire. I don't want to have fear about fire. That's why we are spending so much money in fighting fires and just drying the budget for managing forests. And that's just increasing the problem. So I can go ahead. Go ahead. So the management of our problem is that's the focus of the management. Oh, okay. So having that in account, in understanding that problem, that's where we are investing our money, in the management of the fire, in paying all the resources to fight fire. So go ahead. So that's the 5th generation of wildfires. Initially, in the 50s and the 60s, the whole Mediterranean, the people start to go to the cities. So the landscape starts to change. So suddenly, what it was a landscape with a lot of farms everywhere starts to be a continuous fuel layer over the landscape. So there were the first wildfires, and we start to manage those wildfires, just creating fuel breaks. So go ahead. Yes, just go ahead. The pictures. Okay, stop here. So that was what we had in mind. And those were the easy fires we used to fight those days. Go ahead. But suddenly, go ahead. Suddenly, the fire starts to jump over the fuel breaks. What was happening? Initially, that continuous layer of fuel was creating a lot more fuel built up. So it was not, the problem was not the continuity, it was the intensity inside the continuity. That was, the fuel rate was not working. So that was the first shifting point in our policy. So we went to the second generation of wildfires, and then we started to fight that with the professional firefighting system. Go ahead. So more intensity, more professional wildfires, firefighting, and a lot of associations and more aerial resources, the first ones. But suddenly, again, after the fire started to be more intense because the fuel buildup was just increasing. And so, back. So we started to show the long distance spotting fires. You see, that's the head of the fire. The fire is not still on the road, that he already spotted up there. So that's the first convective wildfires. So when the first convection appeared, then was the next shifting point, tipping point, so a new generation of wildfires. So that's an explanation. It's a Canadian one, but it's working all over the world. How we get into that trap. How we, as an open, modern, and technological society, has been trapped in that negative stress situation where we cannot fight our fires. So, Go ahead. So if that's the type of fire we have, that's what we send to our fire. Fire creates with direct attack. So go ahead. If the fire increases intensity, what will we send there? Just go ahead. A lot more creates with direct attack plus helicopters and airplanes. But if situation gets worse, like this, we will keep sending engines and airplanes. So go ahead. What about this situation if it keeps getting worse? What we will send there? Go ahead. The same. Go ahead. So at the end, that's what we got. And why that happens? It's simple. 99.8, so almost all fires, 99.8, we fight all of them well, and we stop them below 5 hectares. 99.8%. Only 0.2% of the fires escape our threshold of control. So normally, that's human behavior. If you are confronted with a problem, you try to solve the problem the same way you've been solving the same problem all the times. So you don't change a strategy because your strategy has been working all the situations. So what you do is just try harder. That's human behavior, and that's what's happening there. We've been so well trained, so well occupied, so we have had I've been really working well in all the fires we go, that suddenly when we face a problematic fire, we just try harder. We don't change a strategy. And that's what has driven us to the trap. So there is a video there on the side.
I go to your file better. Which one?
Well, yeah. No, this one, sorry, this one. Yep. It's not that one. No, it's not that one, sorry. Just take it over. Humble focus on device. No, you show me this one. Should be that one. Should be that one. Well, at least is what the picture shows. Just click on it now. Okay, that's my one.
Yep.
So that's a kind of short videos to show the mental shock we have. So see fire, we go and fight it. We go, we try, we look at it, and we say, uh-oh. Run out of there. So that's the situation right now over there. You can just finish it. That's the situation there. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. Uh-oh. Okay, just go ahead. So then we go to the third generation, and now, go ahead. So that's the fires we have, convective, go ahead. We are trying some management, go ahead. We introduce prescribed burning as a tool to burn fuel in controlled ways. We understand the propagation of fires, applied a lot of science, go ahead. And we use burnout operations already, and we do a lot of analysis. So we become a fire service with a lot of knowledge. But suddenly, those convective wildfires started to run into towns and into cities. So that created the woodland-urban interface problem, and that's what we call a fourth generation. And why is another generation? Because that generation is forcing us to be defensive, not offensive. And when you are offensive, you choose the ground you will battle your enemy. When you are defensive, the position of what you need to defend is choosing what you will fight it. And normally that's not in your favor. It's against you. So that's changing a lot again. That's a total change in paradigm. So it's a problem. So go ahead. So, and that created those stupid situations. You see, small fire, it's nothing. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fire engines. Each fire engine, 5 people in it. Why? Because it's a lot of people around there. So the impact is huge politically. A lot of people that will vote you or not in the next election. But look at that. Everybody has done the management there, except this guy, because he want to be surrounded by natural forest. And we still fight his fire. So this fourth generation is showing clearly the problem that we are responding to social pressure instead of ecological impact fighting fire. So we are creating a total new wildfire. Convective wildfire are creating what we call the social wildfire problem, which is not the ecosystem wildfire problem. It's a totally different thing. So go ahead. So in that generation of fires, go ahead. It's for pictures, all the human interface, keep going. We need to be a lot more cooperative and join society and understand them. We need to be a lot better preparing, planning, incident command system, share knowledge, multi-criteria teams. It's another thing. It's more social thing. So after that, with that fourth generation, we start to use a lot of simulation tools. Go ahead. A lot of decision-making trees to make sure we decide the decision-making process is according to the needs and desire of our society. Is not anymore ecological or forest problem. Is a society management decision-making problem. So it's starting to be another thing, totally far away from the forest where it started. Now it's a social problem. So go ahead. So that's what we call the fifth generation. It's the mega fire generation. It's where our fires are so big because they have so big impact in our society. They are all over the media and social media that they are becoming clearly a political driving problem. They are changing the opinion of our society about how well or how bad politicians manage the problem. And they are being really and directly linked. Climate change problem, wildfire problem. If you have a wildfire, you are really bad managing climate change, so you're a bad guy. So that's what it's there right now. And that's nothing to do about ecology. It's a lot about sociology. Go ahead. So that's the issue. We started with the first generation problem, small fires. Second generation, small fires still, more speed. Third generation, fire environment, more resources, more analysis, but nothing happened. Fourth generation, well-known interface, a lot of knowledge. Fifth generation, mega fire, bigger fires, still the same problem. What has been happening here? We have been investing a lot in knowledge, in science, and in resources. But where is the problem? In a landscape change and in a full built-up problem. Who has been investing in managing the landscape? Nobody. So have we been investing in solving the problem? No. We've been investing in reacting to the problem. We've been investing in emergency management, not in avoiding the problem. So in medical terms, it's like we have a flu pandemic, and we don't invest in a vaccination. We invest in nicer beds, in nicer hospitals. So that's the approach we've taken in terms of understanding that disturbance problem in our landscape in Europe. And that's something that needs to change. Can we see that video down there? It's the last one, don't worry. Macintosh issue.
Yeah. What do you think it is?
I think it's that one. Okay. Okay, and now you need to go ahead. I need to move ahead a little bit. This, yeah, just there, where I have the pointer. A little bit more. Okay, there, okay. So you see, that's how we really fight wildfires now. You see the big fire coming. You see the poor firefighters there waiting for. And it's a kind of joke about reality, but it showed really well the reality. They should not be here, of course, but sometimes things happen. And that's a better movie of how we have been forced to be defending and how we have to do step back, and step back, because we are not managing the forest. So no matter how good the resources you have are, fire will always win if you leave enough time to build up enough energy. So this is an old guy. He's saying, don't throw water right now, just wait. But it's becoming so huge. You see, stepping back. That's reality down there. And our forests don't have the amount of oil your forests have. So luckily, I will not be here when that happens. It will be already there. So you can just tap it Okay. So keep going. So that's after spending millions and billions of euros every year, that's all we can do. Try to protect what is there, but we are not stopping anything at all. Of course, we stop 99.8% of our fires, but there is always that 0.2% of our wildfires that they burn all the others we managed to put out haven't burned. So it's there. And well, there's another video. Sorry about that. It should be that one. I started. Can you stop it? Just a little. Okay. You see there is a road there. This is one of our engines. Of course, we will have a lot of fun with them, but because they are my firefighters, I'm allowed to do that. That's an oak. The fire went to the road. They were sent there to avoid the fire, jump the road, and just look by yourself what they did. Get out of the engine, start to put water on the fire. Okay, you can stop it. You can stop it if you want. So you've seen what they've got. They burned the engine. The fire jammed the road, and they were not able to put any more fire out because they have no engine and they cannot move from there. So that's a kind of showing how we think about the problem. Flames, let's go and fight them. If I can just give me another engine, I will keep trying. So that's not the way, because that's the vision we have. At the end of after all those 40 years, that's how society is starting to see forest as a big, big, big problem. And we need to change that. That's what we're trying. I was trying to explain you how we are just trying to solve all this mess. Go. So, well, don't worry, I was planning. So, what can we do? We are trying to understand society vision on wildfire. So if we understand, since that is a social problem, we are trying to understand which vision this social community has about wildfire, and we will try to understand fire ecology and landscape ecology. So if we mix the social management through ecology concepts, we think we can start to solve the problem. So can we go? So initially, if we look at the mainstream economics, the negative externality, the negative external effects of any forest are considered a problem. So since fire is a negative effect of having forest, in a lot of ways, our society is comparing wildfire with pollution, something that we have to avoid, something that we have to fight, something that we have to eliminate. But fire is a natural process. Fire is part of the ecosystem. And when we are trying to avoid fire in our ecosystems, comparing fire with pollution, more or less, we are changing the ecosystems. And since we have changed our ecosystems, we have created a bigger wildfire problem. In the old days, fire used not to be that big because we manage our forests. But thousands of years ago, when we didn't manage our forests, then the natural fire regime was managing that fuel type. Never we have had that amount of fuel in our landscape. We are the ones that have created that amount of fuel, fighting fires, not managing our forests, and killing all of the small fires. So in 40 years, we've created a big problem because we were thinking in that way or in that mainstream. Go ahead. So that's the evolution compared. Go ahead. And that's all we've been investing now. So, there's 3 pictures. So for us, all the evolution in our society there has been to eliminate all foresters and to create firefighters, because that's the main problem in our forest. So, go ahead. Right now, That's a Portugal situation, but we've been working a lot there. If you look at that, those are the millions, thousands of hectares, thousands of hectares, and that's the money we get out of those hectares per year. So out of every hectare of forest in Portugal, we can get 202 euros, but, go ahead, we spend 378 euros per hectare to fight the fire problem. So at the end, if we look that as an economy way of thinking, our society sees the investment in our forests as a negative result. And that's a huge problem. And that's in everywhere. So there is no money to invest in our forests because we don't generate enough money to invest in fighting fires. So that's why we are drying out our managing bodies and our people is going to fight fires. Go ahead. Okay. If we go to the economy analyses, go ahead a little bit, that's what's happening. So in the initial equilibrium of quantity of forest and price we as a society pay for forests, that's the initial equilibrium, but now we have to add the new cost, which is the fighting fire cost, which is creating a higher price, and it's adding pressure to reduce the forest surface. So we, instead of solving the problem with all the investment we are doing to fight fire, we are increasing the cost of fighting fires. And since we are doing that, we are just creating the social picture that forest is a problem. And that's happening all over. So go ahead. So just to increase the problems, still things can get worse. Go ahead. So, and that's more European problem. That's bark beetle. Bark beetle is killing thousands of trees per year, and it's adding more fuel. There, go ahead. And this bark beetle problem is creating crown fire problems, then it's evolving a surface problem, but finally it's staying into passive crown problem. So bark beetle is creating the fuel bed to change fire behavior to convective wildfires. Also, the windstorms that has been all over Europe this year are creating amounts of fuel in our problem. So what we can see is that we have climate change that is increasing our problem because it's creating a lot more dead fuel. We have a landscape change that is creating a lot more surface of forest. Then we have bark beetle going into that, killing trees. Then we have storms throwing trees to the ground and killing them. And after that, we have wildfire coming and convection. So everything is getting a little bit worse in climate change. So that's the conclusion we've got. Just forget about it. We go home. But not everything is bad. So after fire, there is green coming. So that's what we think can happen. Go ahead. So this is a picture of all the lightning fires we've had in Catalonia in one day, natural fire regimes. Go ahead. That's those type of fires. So you can go ahead. And that's the fire, and we've been fighting the fire, but just okay, there. Look at that picture. During the last thousands of years, our forest, you see number of trees, it's more or less 1,000 trees per hectare. It was natural fire regime. After the last 40 years, we have been fighting fires, and since we've been fighting fires, you see the new regeneration of trees there. It's a dense new regeneration of trees. In 30 years more, we've had changed a forest that is about 1,000 trees per hectare will be a new dense crown closet forest of 3,000–4,000 trees per hectare. And that new forest will be more prone to burn as a crown fire. So, as natural fire regimes, we can keep those forests adapted to wildfire problem, but since we started to fight the problem, we are increasing the wildfire problem. So go ahead. And we reconstructed the ecology of fires and natural regimes, learning about the fire regimes, how often the forests are burning just to maintain the fuel layer in a low level. Go ahead. And that's counting of the years and every fire scar. So in those areas, normally we changed it. The natural fire regime was about 20 years. Every 10 years we had a fire. Now we get a fire there every 80 years. So the intensity of it's 4 times higher because there is 4 times more fuel built up, and that's the problem. So it's time to go back to where we were years ago. So go ahead. Go ahead. No, go. Yep. So we are starting to allow fire to burn under controlled conditions, to emulate the natural fire regimes, not only doing prescribed fires, but allowing fires to burn and manage that problem. So we are starting not to fight fires, just to cooperate with fire. Go ahead. So that's an example of a wildfire. It has been burning the area. It's been burning a lot of fuel, but it has not been damaging the forest. It has been just creating a dynamic evolution of the forest and adapting the forest to the new climate, which is important. Because if we don't allow our forests to evolve, our forests are adapted to all climates, not to the new climate. So go ahead. So that's what we are trying to create. You can see fire as this, but you can see also wildfire as a patch dynamics over the landscape. Go ahead. And you also can see the patch dynamics in a really low scale, so low intensity, like you have seen in the video at the beginning. So that means the forest is recovering very well. Go ahead. So that's a picture of 2 years ago wildfire. That's the infrared thermal vision. Red means green vegetation, and black means dead vegetation after a wildfire. Go ahead. And that's go ahead. Go ahead. And that's after 1 year. So if you ask everybody from Barcelona what that surface that was one of the most tourist areas, that 10,000 hectares burned there, if you ask, then they will see that was burned last year, so it's gone. But 1 year after, it's there. It's there. So the effect, the impact is lower. So we need to teach and to train our society to understand that fire has a lot of diverse effects, so they need to understand and start to get value or give value to that surface and to that diversity, and start to recover the 11 names we used to have about wildfire, instead of just one that means dead right now. So that's a process that we're learning. So people normally focus on the forest used to look this, and now it's looking this. Then they need to understand how it looks after, because of course there is a lot of forest that is gone, but there is a lot of effects that are there, and we prefer to have that in a low intensity wildfire than instead a convective fire that kills everything. Go ahead. So that's what we have understood. So that's a complicated example to explain, but that's a simulation of fire regime. So we have two options here. We can just play the actual fire regime, which is that one, and this fire regime. So green means burned surface, and blue means forest surface. So along the years, if you fight fires very well, create a lot of forest surface, blue surface, the climate suddenly the fuel build up will create convective fires, so you will burn a lot of surface, and then since a lot of surface is burned, fires will not be able to spread, so you will get a build up of forest again, and then a lot of fires. So it's a kind of cycle. But if you you don't fight your fires and you allow the small fires to happen, then you get a more resilient cycle, a more average cycle. So at the end, the surface burn is just the same. After 100 years, you burn the same surface, but it's only how you burn that surface. High intensity in 1 year, or low intensity every year. So that's the difference. So there is options, and we'll learn that, to survive. There is options to be adapted. There is options to be resilient. And there is a lot of options to change a problematic situation for the normal situation. So we can learn to live with fire, allowing low intensity fires to happen, and managing a landscape in terms of mosaic instead of in terms of carpet. Go ahead. So that's what we are looking, and we understood something, and that's the important thing that Europe is still not understanding, and that's why we are fighting now. We need those type of landscape instead of this big type there. We don't need big patches that can burn all at once. We need small patches that can burn one patch but put the fire out later on. So storms, drought, and barbital is something that we need to create this landscape and make sure that there is not a continuous surface of forest. It's just a patchy forest. So that combination of all the big devils that are menacing our forests today in Europe is the right combination to make sure we don't get the big convective wildfires. And also the other way, wildfires are a nice help to avoid bark beetle and so on. So there is a lot we need to learn about integrating our disturbances into our management instead of trying to avoid them, because they know how to create this landscape that is avoiding the big problems. Because we didn't understand the ecology of disturbances, we created a big problem. That's one lesson we've learned. So go ahead. So that's a picture of Catalonia with all the fires. The blue fires are the 90s fires, and the red fires are the last decade fires, or the first decade of the 21st century. So go ahead. As you see, the last decade has been a lot better in terms of surface burn than the 90s, the blue one. Can we go back? See? So we burn a lot more. So go ahead. So now we can say we are a lot better fighting fires. But if we apply what we have understood, that's not. Go back again. So if you see, we stopped almost all of our fires last 10 years because the fires were blocked by a burning area of 10 years ago. So the patch mosaic created in the 90s has helped us to fight the fires in the first decade of the 21st century. Go ahead. So for the second decade of the 21st century, the landscape has not a lot of fires, old fires. So the continuity of surface is a lot higher. So we are going to have a lot more fires in the next years if we don't manage to create the holes. So if we don't create the holes managing the forest, the fire will create the holes. So that's what we learn. We need to manage that forest, or need to manage that landscape in a mosaic concept, allowing that to stop the problem for ourselves. So go ahead. So that's what we find. If we double the capacity of extinction, we'll have an increase in intensity of our wildfires. If we double our surface management, we will decrease dramatically the intensity of our wildfires. So that shows very well where to invest, and it shows that we have to invest in emulate the natural regimes of disturbances to create a landscape that is resilient, not try to fight the disturbances itself. Go ahead. And that's finally the same statistical process that shows that investing in avoiding ignitions is really reducing the number of fires, but it's increasing the number of big wildfires, convective wildfire. Why? Because it's accumulating fuel. And investing in fire brigades doesn't create really big difference. What creates really a difference is investing in landscape management. It reduces surface, it reduces number of large wildfires. So that's pointing in the same direction. Go ahead. Go ahead. A little bit. Go ahead. Go ahead. So now we are understanding that every area of Catalonia, every regime of fire, those numbers says how often it takes to the natural fire regimes to burn the whole area. That's what we need to emulate. There are so many of the landscape that burn every 84 years or every 25 years, and other ones every 1,000 years. So that shows in our landscape how often or a fire can happen, and what's the need of management of that landscape in terms of creating a resilient landscape. So the focus is not anymore to reduce the surface our fires burn. The focus is to maintain the regimes, to maintain our landscape resilient and adapted to the changes that are coming, including the climate change. Go ahead. And go ahead, because it's so. Again, now if you look at in Europe, what we learn here in that area is what we are applying all over. So we understood that our problem comes from Sahara. In Central Europe, the problem comes from there. But this belt there, Czechoslovakia, Germany, Poland, Belgium, France, and United Kingdom, this belt there is going to be hit by a climate change, it's going to be hit by a lot of bark beetle, it's going to be hit by a lot of storms, and the generation of wildfires will apply there in terms of generation of disturbance managing problems. So that's the lesson we learned. We need to mimic the way disturbance play the role in our forest, and we need to look at the landscape resilient instead of fighting the disturbance. And that's what we've been doing. Go ahead. So thank you for listening and questions.